My name is Vivian Preston, and I'm 32 years old. Last March, my parents threw my sister a $12,000 gender reveal with a helicopter, professional catering, and 85 guests. 6 weeks later, I announced my own pregnancy at a family dinner. My mom looked at me across the table and said, "Don't expect the same. You married beneath us." My dad didn't look up from his plate. My sister started talking about her nursery wallpaper. My grandmother set down her fork and stared at my mother without blinking. I didn't say a word. I picked up my keys, took my husband's hand, and we left. But my grandmother had been watching, not just that night, for 30 years. And 7 months later, at a baby shower my best friend threw because my family couldn't be bothered, she handed me a sealed envelope that brought my parents to my front porch on their knees, begging for forgiveness and for something they'd always assumed was already theirs. Before I get into what was inside, hit like and subscribe, but only if this story genuinely resonates with you. Drop a comment. Where are you watching from right now? And what time is it there? I read everyone. Now, let me take you back to that gender reveal, the night 85 people celebrated my sister while I stood in the corner, 4 weeks pregnant, completely invisible. My sister Brooke is 4 years younger than me, 28, married to Tyler Ashford. Yes, those Ashfords, the family that owns every car dealership between Raleigh and Wilmington. When Brooke got pregnant, my parents treated it like a royal announcement. The gender reveal was held at a rented estate outside town. I'm talking a 200-acre property with a wraparound porch longer than my entire street. My father hired a helicopter to drop colored confetti from 300 feet. Catering was steak and lobster from a Raleigh chef, a DJ, a professional photographer, 85 guests, most of whom I barely recognized. I stood near the back table, next to the sweet tea station, 4 weeks pregnant myself, though I hadn't told anyone yet. My stomach was turning, partly morning sickness, partly something else. My father clinked his glass and stood in front of the crowd. "This is what family is about," he said, voice cracking just enough to sound rehearsed. "Brooke, Tyler, you've given us everything to be proud of." 85 people clapped. The helicopter banked low, pink confetti exploded across the sky, and the crowd screamed like it was the 4th of July. My mother pulled Brooke into a hug so tight the photographer got 6 frames of it. "My perfect girl," she whispered, loud enough for the front row to hear. I clapped too, smiled, held my plastic cup of lemonade, and clapped until my palms stung. Then I looked across the lawn. My grandmother, Lorraine Whitfield, was sitting alone at a corner table with a paper plate she hadn't touched. She wasn't watching Brooke. She wasn't watching the helicopter. She was looking directly at me. Her expression was still, patient, like she was memorizing something she already knew she'd need to remember. I looked away first. 6 weeks later, Sunday dinner at my parents' house in Garner, a suburb where everyone knows your lawn care schedule. I brought the ultrasound in my purse. Marcus drove. He squeezed my knee in the driveway and said, "Whatever happens in there, we're good." The dining room smelled like pot roast and my mother's lavender candle. Brooke was already seated, scrolling through her phone, showing Tyler something about nursery paint swatches. My father was carving meat. My grandmother sat at the head of the table, hands folded over a cloth napkin. I waited until the plates were full. Then I pulled the ultrasound from my purse and slid it across the table to my mother. "We're expecting," I said, "due in January." My mother picked up the photo. She held it at arm's length like she was reading a receipt she didn't remember signing. 3 seconds passed. The silence was so thick I could hear the grandfather clock in the hallway. "Well," she said. She set the photo face down on the table. "Don't expect the same. You married beneath us." My father cut another piece of steak. He didn't look up. Brooke glanced at the ultrasound. "Oh, congrats. Did I show you the wallpaper I picked for the nursery? It's Pottery Barn." Under the table, Marcus took my hand. His fingers were trembling. Marcus never trembles. He builds furniture that holds 400 pounds. His hands are the steadiest part of him, and they were shaking against my palm. At the head of the table, my grandmother set down her fork slowly, deliberately. She didn't say a word. She just looked at my mother for a long time, the way you look at someone when you finally stopped hoping they'll surprise you. Nobody noticed. I did. Marcus and I sat in the parking lot of our apartment for 20 minutes, engine off, windows down. He held my hand in his lap and said nothing, because Marcus knows when silence is the only honest thing left. I cried quietly, the kind of crying that comes sideways when you've been holding your jaw tight for 2 hours. That wasn't the first time. That's what people don't understand. It was the 1,000th time in a pattern so old it had its own rhythm. When I was 16, I won first place in the county essay competition. My parents didn't come to the ceremony. That same week, Brooke, 12 at the time, placed third in a swim meet. The whole family drove 4 hours to Asheville to cheer her on. I found out about it from a photo on the fridge. When I graduated college, full scholarship, zero debt, my parents showed up 40 minutes late and left early. Brooke had a recital. My wedding? 30 guests. My parents contributed $1,500, and my mother complained about the napkin color for 3 weeks. Brooke's wedding, 6 months earlier, 200 guests, $45,000, a live band, and a champagne tower. Marcus wiped my cheek with his thumb. Viv, you don't owe them an explanation for who you married. He was right. Marcus runs his own custom woodworking business. He makes between $85,000 and $110,000 a year, builds furniture that people fly in from Charlotte to commission, and just finished a $40,000 interior project for a boutique hotel. He is not beneath anyone. But my mother measured worth in last names and country club invitations, and Marcus's last name was Reed, not Ashford. I didn't know it then, but someone had been keeping a record, every date, every slight, for 30 years. 2 weeks after that dinner, I called my grandmother on her landline. She refused to own a cell phone and called them tracking devices with manners. It was our weekly check-in, same as always. I asked about her garden, she asked about my nausea, then her voice shifted. "Your mother called me yesterday," she said. "Okay." "Told me I shouldn't drive so far anymore. Said I'm too old to be making that trip to see you. Said the highway is dangerous for someone my age." I gripped the kitchen counter. "She told you not to visit me?" "She told me to rest. Same thing, different wrapping." My chest tightened. It wasn't about safety. My grandmother had been driving to see me every month for 6 years, 2 hours each way, rain or shine. My mother never once offered to drive her, and now, suddenly, she was worried about the highway? "Grandma, are you going to listen to her?" A pause. Then, in a voice as dry as August, "I'm 78 years old. I listen to whoever I choose." I exhaled. But the next week, I heard from my cousin Dana that my mother had told the extended family something entirely different. According to Diane Preston's version, I was the one who told Grandma to stop visiting because I was paranoid about the inheritance and didn't want my grandmother influenced. She flipped it completely. I was the one pushing Grandma away. I was the one scheming. I sat with that for a long time. My mother didn't just prefer Brooke. She was willing to rewrite reality to keep the structure intact, to keep me in my place, to make sure that if I ever spoke up, nobody would believe me, because she'd already seeded the story. That scared me more than any insult. It was my best friend, Jolene, who told me. She called on a Wednesday morning and I could hear her pacing, her sneakers squeaking against linoleum, which meant she was on a break at the hospital. "I need to tell you something and you're going to be angry." "Go ahead." "Your mom was at the women's brunch at church last Sunday. 12 women. She told the entire table that Marcus has no health insurance, that he does odd jobs for cash, and that you married him because you needed somewhere to live." I set my coffee down. "She said that verbatim?" Laura Kendall was sitting right there. She texted me after. Everything my mother said was a lie. Marcus carries full business insurance, his clients sign contracts, he pays quarterly taxes. He is not a handyman doing odd jobs. He's a craftsman with a 6-month wait list. My mother knows all of this. She's been to Marcus's workshop. She's seen his client list pinned to the wall. She chose to lie anyway. That night, I told Marcus. He was in the garage sanding a headboard for a client in Durham. He stopped the belt sander, pulled off his safety glasses, looked at me. "How many people?" he asked. 12. He nodded once. Then he said the thing that broke something open in me. "Viv, I'm not going to ask you to cut off your family."
That's your call, and I'll stand behind whatever you choose. But I will not let our child grow up thinking their father is something to be ashamed of. That's my line. I stood in the garage doorway, sawdust floating in the light behind him, and I understood. This wasn't just about my feelings anymore. Marcus had drawn a boundary, and he was right to draw it. The question was what I was going to do with mine. The answer came to me sideways, the way most truths do, not through confrontation, but through a piece of mail I wasn't supposed to see. I drove out to Grandma Lorraine's beach house in the Outer Banks for my bi-weekly visit. She was in the kitchen making her lemon pound cake, the one she'd been baking since before I was born. I was sorting her mail, something I always did, because her arthritis made it hard to tear envelopes. Halfway through the stack, I stopped. A thick envelope from a mortgage brokerage in Raleigh, addressed not to my grandmother, but to Richard Preston, care of her address. I held it up. "Grandma, why is Dad getting mail here?" She didn't turn from the counter. "Your father came by last week, brought paperwork, wants me to sign off on a refinance. Says he needs the house as collateral to expand his hardware stores." I set the envelope down like it was hot. "He wants to borrow against your house?" He called it a family investment. She cracked an egg one-handed, the way she'd been doing for 50 years. Funny how it's always a family investment when someone else's name is on the deed. My mind was racing. My father ran 3 hardware stores across Johnson County. I knew the expansion had stalled, supply chain issues, a contractor dispute, but I didn't know he was leveraged enough to need $1 million beach house as a backstop. "Did you sign anything?" I told him I'd think about it. He left without hugging me. She turned around, wiped her hands on her apron, looked at me with that expression. Clear, calm, stripped of pretense. "Vivian, you think I don't see what's happening? I see everything. I just haven't decided what to do about it yet." She had. I just didn't know it. Let me pause here for a second. I know some of you are watching this and thinking, why didn't you just confront your parents right there? I get it. But when you grow up in a family where every act of self-defense gets relabeled as disrespect, you learn to pick your moment. And my moment hadn't come yet. If you've ever had to choose between keeping the peace and protecting yourself, tell me about it in the comments. I read every single one. Okay, let's keep going. The thing about humiliation is that it doesn't always come with a spotlight. Sometimes it finds you in a coffee shop on a Tuesday. I was standing in line at Bean and Barrel downtown, 5 months pregnant, when Rachel Glover, a woman I used to work with at the restaurant, tapped me on the shoulder. "Oh my God, Vivian! Brooke's gender reveal was so fun. That helicopter? Insane. She looked amazing." I blinked. What gender reveal? Rachel's face went through 3 expressions in 2 seconds. Confusion, then realization, then pity. The pity was the worst. "You weren't there?" "I wasn't invited." "Oh." She looked at her shoes. "I'm sorry, I just assumed." I smiled, ordered my decaf, walked to my car, sat behind the wheel, and let it hit me. 85 people in my town knew about my sister's party. My mother's church friends, my father's business contacts, neighbors, the whole network. And I, her sister, had no idea it happened until a stranger mentioned it at a coffee counter. I called my mother that afternoon, kept my voice even. "Mom, I just found out about the gender reveal. I wasn't invited." "Oh, honey, I thought Brooke sent you something. Maybe the mail got lost." "It was an e-invite, Mom, through an app." Silence. "Well, maybe she forgot. You know how busy she's been." 85 people, Mom. She forgot her sister." A sharp breath on the other end, then the pivot, the one she'd perfected over decades. "Don't make this about you, Vivian. You always do this." She hung up. I stared at my phone. The screen went black, and I saw my own face reflected in it. Tired, pregnant, still somehow expecting a different answer from the same people. That was the last time I called her. Jolene sent me the screenshots 3 days later. 47 photos on Facebook, an album titled The Most Magical Day with a pink heart emoji. Brooke glowing in a white dress, Tyler with his arm around her, the helicopter mid-drop, confetti frozen against a blue sky, my parents beaming, arms linked with the Ashfords. The caption read, "Blessed beyond measure. Thank you, Mom and Dad, for the most magical day. Best family ever." She tagged my father, my mother, Tyler, Tyler's parents, 15 friends, 3 cousins, 2 neighbors, even the DJ. She did not tag me. She did not mention me. In 47 photos and 300 words of gratitude, I did not exist. I scrolled through the comments. Most were congratulations, fire emojis, heart eye faces. Then I found one from my Aunt Patty. Where was Vivian? My mother's reply, posted 14 minutes later. She wasn't feeling well. I was perfectly healthy that day. I was 4 weeks pregnant and at home eating leftover pasta because nobody told me there was a party. She just lied, I said to Jolene on the phone, in writing to the whole family. I screenshotted everything. Jolene said, "You want me to?" "No, just keep it." I kept scrolling. Somewhere near the bottom of the album was a wide shot of the crowd, and in the far left corner, barely visible, almost cropped out, my grandmother sat alone at her table. Her plate was untouched. She was not smiling. That night, Marcus looked over my shoulder at the phone, studied the album for a long time, then locked the screen and set it face down on the counter. "They didn't just forget you, Viv. They erased you." He was right. And the thing about being erased is that it only works if you let it. My father called the following week. He almost never calls. Richard Preston communicates through proximity. He shows up, sits up ahead of the table, and assumes his presence is the conversation. So when his name lit up my phone on a Thursday evening, I knew my mother had sent him. "Vivian, your mom says you're upset about the party." "I'm not upset, Dad. I was excluded." "Look, you have to understand. Brooke is in a different position. Tyler's family, they're influential. We needed to present a certain image. It was important for business. I'm your daughter too, Dad." A pause. "I know that, but Marcus, he's a good man, I'm sure. He's just not Tyler Ashford. The world runs on connections, Vivian. That's reality." I let 5 full seconds pass, the kind of silence that makes the other person shift in their chair. "Is that what family is, Dad? A connection to leverage?" "Don't be dramatic. We love you both the same." Click. I set the phone on the kitchen counter. Marcus was across the room, marking a piece of walnut for a bookshelf commission. He looked at me. I shook my head. "He said they love us both the same," I told him. Marcus sat down his pencil. "The same, right? 45 grand for one wedding, 1,500 for the other. A helicopter for one baby, not even a phone call for the other. That's the same?" I almost laughed. Almost. "He said it the way someone returns a broken lamp and tells the clerk it was like that when they bought it," I said. That was the last time my father called me. 7 months of silence followed. No texts, no check-ins, no sonogram requests, nothing. 7 months until the day the deed disappeared from my grandmother's name. Summer settled in. My belly grew. Marcus finished the crib. Hand-carved white oak with dovetail joints and a rocking mechanism he designed himself. He set it in the nursery and ran his palm along the rail like he was greeting it. I kept visiting my grandmother every 2 weeks. The drive to the Outer Banks had become my exhale. 2 hours of empty highway, windows down, radio low. One Saturday in July, I pulled into her gravel driveway and found the house dark. The porch light was off. Her Buick was gone. Mrs. Cooper, the neighbor next door, was watering her hydrangeas. She waved me over. "Your grandma went to Wilmington this morning, said she had paperwork to handle." "Paperwork?" "That's what she said. Left around 8. I called her cell. The landline trick hadn't worked, so she'd finally accepted a flip phone the previous Christmas. She picked up on the 4th ring. "Hi, sweetheart. I had a doctor's appointment and then a few errands. I'll be back by 4. You okay?" "I'm fine, just tying up loose ends." I waited at the house, made her bed, swept the porch, put a pot of soup on the stove. While setting the kitchen table, I noticed a business card on the shelf beside her recipe box. White card, navy lettering, Henderson and Cole.
Estate and Property Law, Wilmington, North Carolina. I picked it up, turned it over, nothing on the back. I put it down exactly where I found it. I didn't ask about it. She was 78. People her age update their wills, arrange trusts, handle the kind of practical housekeeping that nobody likes to talk about. I assumed it was routine. That was the first thing I misread. My grandmother never did anything routine. The next visit, she cooked. My grandmother's kitchen was her courtroom. She controlled the temperature, the timing, and the conversation. That afternoon, while rolling out biscuit dough with her arthritic hands, she started asking about Marcus. Specific questions, the kind that had structure behind them. Does Marcus carry health insurance for the family? Yes, Grandma, through his business plan. The workshop, whose name is on the lease? His? He's been there for years. And the clients, are they local or does he ship? I sat down the butter dish. Grandma, why are you asking all this? She dusted flour off her palms. I just want to know my granddaughter is taken care of. There was more. She asked to see photos of his workshop on my phone. I scrolled through Marcus cutting boards on a table saw, sanding a dining set for a client in Raleigh, standing next to a finished bookcase taller than he was. She stopped me on one photo. Marcus in the nursery, bent over the white oak crib, polishing the rail with a soft cloth. His sleeves were rolled to the elbows, sawdust on his forearms. He's building the crib himself? She asked. He's been working on it for weeks. She stared at the photo for a long time. Then she closed my phone gently. The way you close a book you finished. Your grandfather built our kitchen table with his own hands. 52 years. That table still stands. She looked at me. Marcus is a good man. She didn't say it like a compliment. She said it like a verdict. I watched her slide the biscuits into the oven and set the timer, and I had the strange feeling that something much larger was being timed alongside them. A week later, I drove out again. My grandmother was sitting on the porch when I arrived, which was unusual. She normally waited inside. Her jaw was set in that way it gets when she's processing something she's already decided to be angry about. Your father was here Tuesday, she said, before I'd even closed the car door. I sat beside her on the swing. What happened? He brought a folder full of paperwork, refinance documents. He wants to put this house up as collateral to expand his stores. Sat right there in my kitchen and said, Mom, it's a family investment. Just sign and I'll handle the rest. What did you say? I said I'd think about it. He left, didn't hug me, didn't ask about my hip. She rocked the swing once. The chain creaked. Then your mother called the next day, sweet as syrup. Mama, Richard is so stressed. Don't you trust your own son? We'll keep the house safe, I promise, like she was selling me insurance. I felt the heat rise in my neck. They want to borrow against your home? The home Grandpa built? Your grandfather and I poured the foundation ourselves in 1972. I was 24 years old, 8 months pregnant with your mother, mixing concrete in July heat. She turned to me. I will not let anyone turn this house into a line of credit. I wanted to say more. I wanted to tell her not to sign. But it was her house, her decision, and I had spent my whole life not inserting myself into other people's choices, even when those choices were about to affect me. Vivian, she said quietly, I've made my decision. It's just not the one your father wants. I didn't ask what it was. I wish I had. Hold on. I want to ask you something real. If your parents were trying to use your grandmother's home as a bargaining chip while telling the whole town your husband wasn't good enough, what would you do? I didn't have the answer then. Honestly, I'm not sure I have a perfect one now, but my grandmother did. She'd already made her move. If you think you know what she did, drop your diss in the comments before you keep watching. I'll wait. Okay, here's where things escalate. My parents throw a 4th of July barbecue every year. It's their performance. The one day Richard Preston opens his wallet and Diane Preston opens her arms, and they play the part of the family everyone wishes they had. 40 guests, red, white, and blue tablecloths, ribs on the smoker since dawn. I almost didn't go. Marcus almost didn't let me, but my grandmother would be there, and I hadn't seen her in 2 weeks, so we drove out. The moment we walked into the backyard, I felt the temperature shift. My mother was standing by the drink table with a woman I didn't recognize. "This is Brooke, our daughter," she said, gesturing like a game show host, "and Tyler from the Ashford family." She paused, turned to us, "And that's Vivian and her husband." She didn't say Marcus's name. In front of 40 people, she introduced her son-in-law by bloodline and her other son-in-law by ellipsis. Tyler's father, Bill Ashford, shook Marcus's hand. "So, what do you do, Marcus?" "Custom woodworking, furniture, cabinetry, built-ins." Bill raised his eyebrows. "Oh, like a carpenter?" My father chuckled. "Jesus was one too, right?" The table laughed. Marcus didn't. He held Bill Ashford's hand for one extra second, looked him in the eye, and said, "Something like that." Then he let go and pulled my chair out for me. Later, Brooke was showing a circle of women photos of her nursery. $25,000, professionally designed wallpaper, hand-printed from Italy. Someone turned to me. "And your nursery, Vivian?" "My husband is building the crib himself," I said. Silence. Then my mother filling it the way she fills every silence she finds uncomfortable. "Well, isn't that resourceful?" Resourceful? A word that sounds like a compliment if you're not listening closely. After the fireworks, my mother gathered everyone on the front porch for what she called the family photo. She arranged the lineup herself. Richard in the center, Diane beside him, Brooke on his other side, one hand on her belly, Tyler behind her, hand on her shoulder, the Ashfords flanking the edges. A neighbor with a good camera stood on the lawn. I stepped forward. My mother held up her palm like a crossing guard. "Oh, honey, we'll do another one with everyone after. This is just the immediate group." I am her immediate family. I was her firstborn daughter. I was standing 6 feet away, 6 months pregnant, and she waved me off like I was a guest who'd wandered into the frame. The camera clicked. 3 shots, 4. Brooke laughed at something. Tyler whispered. My father beamed. There was no second photo. There never was. 40 people saw it. Some looked away. A few raised their eyebrows at each other. My Aunt Patty opened her mouth, then closed it. My grandmother was sitting on the porch swing at the far end. Her hands were folded in her lap. Her face was perfectly still. I walked back to the table where Jolene was sitting. She took my hand under the tablecloth and squeezed at once. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Marcus was already at the car. I found him leaning against the driver's side door, arms crossed, jaw locked. "We're not coming back here." "I know." We pulled out of the driveway in silence. In the side mirror, I caught one last image. My grandmother standing up from the swing, watching our taillights disappear down the road. She looked like someone who'd just finished deliberating. The phone rang at 10 that night. I was lying on the couch with a pillow between my knees and Marcus's hand on my ankle. The caller ID said, "Lorene Whitfield, home." "Grandma." Her voice was low, steady, but there was a tremor underneath, the kind that comes from restraint, not weakness. "Vivian, I watched what happened today." "Grandma, please, I'm fine. Really, it is not fine." She cut me off clean. No anger, just clarity. "I watched your mother push you out of a photograph in front of 40 people. I watched your father laugh at your husband's profession. I watched your sister act like you were a stranger at your own family's table. And I have spent my whole life not inserting myself into other people's choices, even when those choices were about to affect me." "Vivian," she said quietly, "I've made my decision. It's just not the one your father wants." I didn't ask what it was. I wish I had. "Hold on, I want to ask you something real. If your parents were trying to use your grandmother's home as a bargaining chip while telling the whole town your husband wasn't good enough, what would you do?" I didn't have the answer then. Honestly, I'm not sure I have a perfect one now, but my grandmother did. She'd already made her move. If you think you know what she did, drop your guess in the comments before you keep watching. I'll wait. Okay, here's where things escalate. My parents throw a 4th of July barbecue every year. It's their performance.
Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Then your grandmother doesn't make announcements she can't back up." He was right. In 78 years, Lorene Whitfield had never bluffed. She didn't threaten, she didn't posture. She decided, she moved, and other people found out about it when the ground shifted under their feet. I fell asleep that night with one sentence circling my head like a slow orbit. "I've made up my mind." 4 months later, I found out what she meant. November.
The air had turned sharp and my belly had turned enormous. 8 months. I hadn't spoken to my parents since the 4th of July. No calls, no texts, no Sunday dinners. The silence was the loudest sound in my life, and I was learning to live inside it. Jolene organized my baby shower. She did it the way Jolene does everything, efficiently, warmly, without asking anyone's permission. She booked the back room at Clementine's, a small coffee shop on Main Street, with exposed brick and mismatched chairs. She invited 18 people, friends from the restaurant where I work, 2 neighbors, a few women from Marcus's client network, and 3 of my college friends who drove in from Raleigh. No helicopter, no DJ, no catering crew. Jolene's mother baked the cake, lemon with cream cheese frosting, because she remembered it was my favorite. The flowers came from Jolene's own garden, clipped that morning and arranged in mason jars. Someone brought a banner that said Baby Reed in yellow felt letters. My parents were not invited. Brooke was not invited. I didn't want to spend the one day dedicated to my child scanning the room for disapproval. Marcus set up the centerpiece, the white oak crib he'd built, polished and perfect, displayed on a table in the middle of the room like a piece of art. At 11:15, Jolene's car pulled up outside. She opened the passenger door and out stepped my grandmother, Lorraine Whitfield, 78 years old, in a blue cardigan and a hat I recognized, the one my grandfather bought her in Savannah the year before he died. She was carrying a sealed envelope in her left hand. She walked into that coffee shop like she was walking into church, deliberate, dignified, holding something sacred. I just didn't know what it was yet. The shower unfolded gently. Gifts were opened, stories were told. Marcus stood by the crib and accepted compliments with his usual quiet nod. My grandmother sat in the corner chair Jolene had padded with extra cushions, sipping tea, watching everyone with those sharp gray eyes. After the last gift, she touched my elbow. "Come outside with me for a minute." We stepped onto the porch. The November air smelled like wood smoke in the last of someone's leaf pile. She reached into her cardigan pocket and pulled out the envelope, cream-colored, heavy, sealed with clear tape. "This is for you," she said. I opened it. My hands were shaking before I even tore the flap. Inside were 3 items. The first was a deed of transfer. Beth House, Outer Banks, North Carolina. Notarized, signed by Lorraine Whitfield. New owners, Vivian Preston and Marcus Reed. Appraised value, $1.2 million. The second was a savings account statement opened in 1994, the year I was born. Monthly contributions, compounding interest, 32 years of growth. Current balance, $4.3 million. The third was a handwritten letter, 4 pages front and back in her careful cursive. I couldn't breathe. "Grandma, this is why." She took my hand. "I opened a matching account the day each of you was born. Brooke's account. Your parents withdrew the entire balance when she turned 18. They said it was for college. It went to her car, her sorority, her wedding fund. I let it happen because I thought they'd make it right." She paused. "They didn't. And mine? I never told them it existed." Her grip tightened. "Some things are worth protecting in silence." Through the window, 18 faces watched us. None of them knew what I was holding, but every one of them could see I was falling apart. I read the letter that night, sitting cross-legged on our bed while Marcus slept beside me. My grandmother's handwriting was neat and unhurried, the kind of penmanship they taught in schools that no longer exist. Every entry was dated. June 14th, 2012, your high school graduation. I sat in the 3rd row. Your parents sat in the back and left before your name was called. I stayed. I watched you look for them in the crowd. I watched you stop looking. September 2016, your first apartment. You moved in alone. You carried your own boxes. Your parents drove Brooke to orientation at Chapel Hill the same weekend. They bought her a mini fridge and a bedside lamp. You got a text that said, "Good luck." March 2023, your wedding. 30 guests. Your mother complained about the napkins for 3 weeks. I danced with Marcus. He held my hand like I was glass. That's when I knew he was the one. March 2025, 85 guests for your sister's gender reveal, 0 for you. I counted. The last paragraph filled the final half page. "Vivian,
I have loved you the way your parents should have, quietly and without condition. This house and this money are not a reward, they are a correction. You were never beneath anyone. You were always the one who showed up. To my door, to my doctor's appointments, to my kitchen on Saturday mornings when no one else remembered I was alive. You are the reason I still bake. Grandma Lorraine. I folded the letter along its original creases, set it on my nightstand. Marcus stirred. You okay? He murmured. My grandmother kept score for 30 years, I whispered, and I won. He pulled me close, the baby kicked between us, and 200 miles away, my parents had no idea what had just changed hands. 2 weeks later, it happened. I didn't orchestrate it, I didn't plan it, my parents lit the fuse themselves. Richard called my grandmother on a Tuesday morning. I know the exact conversation because she recounted it to me word for word that evening, and my grandmother does not paraphrase. Mom, I've got the refinance documents finalized. When can I bring them for your signature? You can't, Richard. The house is no longer in my name. 10 seconds of silence. What do you mean it's not in your name? I transferred the deed to Vivian and Marcus. It's been notarized, recorded with the county, and filed with my attorney. It's done. You gave it to her? His voice cracked. Mom, that house was supposed to what? Be your collateral? Her tone didn't waver. That house was never yours, Richard. It was mine. My father and I built it with our hands, and now it belongs to someone who never once asked me for a thing. He hung up on her. Within the hour, my phone began to buzz. 14 missed calls from my mother in 2 hours. I let everyone go to voicemail. I sat at the kitchen table watching the screen light up and go dark, like a heartbeat monitor for a relationship that had been flatlining for years. 14 calls in 7 months of silence after I announced my pregnancy, through an entire summer, through holidays and milestones and ultrasounds. My mother had called me exactly 0 times, but the moment the house changed hands, 14 calls in 120 minutes. Marcus came in from the workshop, saw my phone vibrating on the table, and looked at me. They found out, I said. He sat down across from me. How do you feel? Numb and a little free. They came on a Sunday. Marcus and I were painting the nursery, a pale sage green he'd mixed himself. The doorbell rang at 3 in the afternoon. I wiped my hands on a rag and opened the door. My mother stood on the porch with mascara smudged under her eyes. My father stood behind her, holding a brown paper bag. Inside, I could see the edge of a picture frame, a family photo from when I was 5, the one where I'm sitting on his lap at the lake. Nostalgia as a negotiation tool. I notice, Vivian, my mother's voice was raw. We need to talk. Mama shouldn't have done this without consulting us. She didn't need to consult you. It was her property. My father stepped forward. His jaw was working. Honey, the business expansion. I've signed contracts. If I don't have the collateral by January, I lose everything. 2 stores, 60 employees. I'm sorry about your business, Dad. Then give us the deed back.
We'll work something out. A rental agreement, a lien, anything. My mother dropped to her knees on the porch right there on the concrete in November in front of God and the neighbor's security cameras. She grabbed my hand. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Married beneath us. I didn't mean it. I swear I didn't mean it. I looked down at her. This woman who had excluded me from photos and lied about me to 12 churchwomen and told my grandmother not to visit me. Kneeling, crying, holding my hand like it was a lifeline. Which part are you sorry for, Mom? I said quietly. The words or losing the house? She didn't answer. That silence told me everything I needed to know. Marcus appeared behind me in the doorway. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. He just stood there, sawdust on his forearms, paint on his shirt, 6'2" of quiet, unshakable presence. Stand up, Mom, I said it gently. Please. She got to her feet, wiped her face with the back of her hand. I am not giving the house back, I said. Grandma made that decision with a clear mind and a licensed attorney. She's competent, she's lucid, and she had her reasons. That is final. But the business my father started. Dad? I held up my hand. You planned to use Grandma's house as collateral without telling me. You didn't ask how I was doing once in 7 months. You didn't call when I had my 20-week ultrasound. The only reason you're standing on this porch is the deed." He opened his mouth, closed it. "But I'm not you," I said. "I'm not shutting the door. If you want to be in this baby's life, really in it, not for holiday photos, not for social media posts, not because it looks good at church, then it starts with respect. For me, for Marcus, for this family we've built. Every visit is scheduled in advance, no dropping by unannounced. You do not speak about Marcus, his work, his income, his worth behind our backs again. Ever. If I hear that you have, the next visit gets pushed back a month. That's not a punishment. That's a boundary." My mother nodded, still crying. My father looked at Marcus for the first time, really looked at him. Marcus met his gaze and held it. "We'll try," my father said. "Trying is showing up," I said, "consistently without conditions. That's all I've ever asked." They walked to their car. I didn't close the door until they drove away, but I didn't follow them either. News travels fast in a small town, and in our corner of North Carolina, it travels at the speed of a church brunch. Within a week, everyone knew. The details mutated slightly with each retelling. Some people said my grandmother gave me 2 houses. Others claimed my father tried to forge her signature. But the core of the story stayed intact. Lorraine Whitfield transferred her beach house to her older granddaughter instead of her son, and people wanted to know why. The consequences arrived in order. First, my father's business. Without the beach house as collateral, Richard couldn't close the expansion loan. He sold one of his 3 hardware stores, the one on Route 42, to cover the gap. The expansion wasn't dead, but it was delayed by at least 2 years. 60 employees didn't lose their jobs, but 20 at the sold location were absorbed into the remaining stores at reduced hours. Second, my mother's reputation. The women's group at Grace Fellowship Baptist, the same group she told that Marcus was a cash-only handyman, began asking questions. Aunt Patty called me. "Vivian, your grandmother sent me a copy of her letter, the one with the dates. I read every line. I should have spoken up years ago. I saw it and I said nothing." Third, the Ashfords. Tyler's mother, Helen Ashford, called Brooke. "Honey, is everything all right with your family?" It was the first time Brooke had to explain something she'd spent 28 years not noticing. By all accounts, she stumbled through it. My mother stopped attending the women's brunch. She told people she was taking a break for health reasons. Nobody believed her. In a town like ours, a break for health reasons means you've been caught, and everyone knows it. The structure my parents spent decades building, the image, the performance, was cracking. Brooke called me on a Wednesday in early December. Her voice was different, stripped of the chirpy brightness she'd worn like bronzer for as long as I'd known her. She sounded like someone who'd been up too long. "Viv, can we talk? Not about the house. I don't care about the house." I agreed to meet her at Clementine's, the same coffee shop where my baby shower had been held. She was already there when I arrived, sitting in the corner booth, hands wrapped around a cup she wasn't drinking. "I didn't know Mom said that to you," she said. "Married beneath us? I mean, I heard it. I was sitting right there, but I didn't let it land." "You laughed, Brooke." She closed her eyes. "I know. You showed everyone your Pottery Barn wallpaper while my ultrasound was face down on the table." "I know." Her voice cracked. "I'm not going to sit here and make excuses. I was selfish, I was comfortable, and I didn't see you because it was easier not to." I let that sit between us. "Grandma sent me a copy of the letter," she said. "Every date, every time they showed up for me and disappeared on you. Every time I got the party and you got the silence." She pressed her fingertips against her eyes. She didn't hold back. She never does. "Viv, I want to try, if you'll let me. I'm not going to pretend I can undo 28 years in one coffee, but I want to show up." I looked at my younger sister, really looked at her. She was scared, not of losing the house or the money. She was scared of what she'd see if she kept reading that letter. "Trying is showing up, Brooke. Not once, not when it's convenient. Consistently." She nodded. It was small, but it was a start. A week before Christmas, I drove my grandmother to the beach house.
Her beach house, my beach house. Neither of us had figured out the possessive yet, and maybe that was the point. The ocean was winter gray and loud. We sat on the porch in matching Adirondack chairs that my grandfather had built in 1985. My grandfather had resanded and sealed them the month before without being asked. Your grandfather bought this place in 1972, $28,000. I told him he was crazy. He said, "One day our grandchild will sit right here and watch the same water." He was right. I looked at her, the wind was pulling at her cardigan, her hands were in her lap, fingers laced together the way they always are when she's at peace. "Grandma, are you sure about this? This is your home." She turned to me, and her eyes, gray like the sea, sharp like a woman who has outlived everyone who underestimated her, held mine. "This is my house, sweetheart. You are my home. There's a difference." I bit the inside of my cheek to keep it together. "I owe you an apology, too," she said. "I should have spoken up sooner, when you were little, when the pattern started. I kept thinking your mother would come around. She didn't, and I let years go by. You protected me, Grandma. You just did it your way." She nodded slowly. "Then what are you naming the baby?" "We haven't decided. I like Margot. It was my mother's name. I tested it. Margot Reed." She smiled. "That sounds like a woman who won't take nonsense from anyone." "She won't," I said. "I'll make sure of it." The ocean kept coming, the porch held steady, and for the first time in a long time, I felt the ground solid beneath me.
She hummed a melody I didn't recognize, low and sweet. When I asked about it later, she said it was a lullaby her own grandmother used to sing in the kitchen, 4 generations in a single melody. That evening, I sent my mother a text, a photo of Margot wrapped in the yellow blanket Jolene had knitted. I typed 2 words beneath it. "She's here." My mother replied 2 hours later, "Beautiful. Can we come?" I typed back, "Saturday, 2 p.m. Marcus will be home. Boundaries clear. Scheduled on my terms." They arrived that Saturday at exactly 2. My father held Margot in the living room, his hands unsteady, his mouth pulled tight, the way men's mouths get when they're trying not to break. My mother walked through the nursery and stopped at the crib. She ran her fingers along the oak rail. "Marcus," she said quietly, "thank you for this. It's beautiful." He nodded. "You're welcome, Mrs. Preston. A first step. Small, real. I want to be honest with you. I didn't walk away from this story as a hero. I walked away as someone who finally learned where she ends and other people begin. My parents didn't transform overnight. My mother still has moments where the mask slips, a comment about Tyler's promotion at Christmas, a lingering look at Brooke's Instagram that she thinks I don't notice. Change, when it comes at 58 and 60, is slow and incomplete. I've accepted that, but the rules are in place. Every visit is scheduled in advance. No surprises. My home is not a drop-in center for guilt. Nobody speaks about Marcus, his profession, his income, his background with anything less than respect, in person or behind closed doors. The first time I hear otherwise, the next visit gets pushed back 30 days. I've enforced it twice. Brooke is welcome. She texts me every Sunday now, sometimes just a photo of her daughter, sometimes a real question. Last month, she asked me how I knew Marcus was the one. It was the first time she'd ever asked me anything about my life that didn't circle back to her own. The beach house belongs to me and Marcus. It is not available for refinancing, leveraging, or borrowing against. Anyone who brings it up is reminded once. There is no second reminder. And my grandmother, she spends 2 weeks a month with us now. Her vascular dementia is progressing slowly, and there are days she forgets the name of the town, but remembers every line of the letter she wrote me. I take that as proof that some things live deeper than memory. She taught me something I wish I'd learned earlier. Love doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it sits in a corner, watches for 30 years, and makes its move when it matters most. It's a Tuesday morning, and I'm sitting on the porch of the beach house. Margot is asleep in the oak crib. Marcus carried it out here so she could nap in the salt air, the way my grandmother said her own children used to. The ocean is doing what it always does, arriving, retreating, arriving again. patient in a way that people rarely are. Inside, the kitchen table my grandfather built in 1970 still holds steady on its original legs. Marcus tightened the joints last month and said the craftsmanship was better than anything he'd seen in a catalog. Beside it, on the wall, hangs a new frame, my grandmother holding Margot on the day they met, both of them looking at the camera like they've known each other for 100 years. Marcus is outside, fixing the porch stairs. He's wearing the same flannel he wore the night he sat with me in that parking lot and held my hand without saying a word. Some men fill a room by talking. Marcus fills it by staying. I don't know what comes next with my parents. I don't know if my mother will ever understand why she lost the house, or if she'll spend the rest of her life believing she was robbed. I don't know if my father will ever look at Marcus and see a man instead of a missed opportunity. But I know this. My grandmother said, "This is my house. You are my home." And she was right. Home isn't four walls and a deed. Home is the person who chose you, not because of what you achieved or who you married, but because you showed up every Saturday, every rainy drive, every quiet afternoon in a kitchen that smelled like lemon pound cake. If you're watching this and you're the one in your family who always shows up but never gets seen, someone is watching. I promise you. They're just waiting for the right moment. Thank you for staying until the end. I mean that. If this story hit close to home, leave me a comment. Would you have forgiven my parents, or would you have kept your distance? There's no right answer, just yours. Hit like if you believe quiet love is the strongest kind. Subscribe if you want more stories like this one, and check the description. I've linked a few more that I think you'll connect with. I'll see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves and take care of the people who take care of.
She hummed a melody I didn't recognize, low and sweet. When I asked about it later, she said it was a lullaby her own grandmother used to sing in the kitchen. 4 generations in a single melody. That evening, I sent my mother a text, a photo of Margot wrapped in the yellow blanket Jolene had knitted. I typed 2 words beneath it. She's here. My mother replied 2 hours later. Beautiful. Can we come? I typed back. Saturday, 2 p.m. Marcus will be home. Boundaries clear, scheduled, on my terms. They arrived that Saturday at exactly 2. My father held Margot in the living room, his hands unsteady, his mouth pulled tight the way men's mouths get when they're trying not to break. My mother walked through the nursery and stopped at the crib. She ran her fingers along the oak rail. "Marcus," she said quietly, "thank you for this. It's beautiful." He nodded. "You're welcome, Mrs. Preston." A first step, small, real. I want to be honest with you. I didn't walk away from this story as a hero. I walked away as someone who finally learned where she ends and other people begin. My parents didn't transform overnight. My mother still has moments where the mask slips, a comment about Tyler's promotion at Christmas, a lingering look at Brooke's Instagram that she thinks I don't notice. Change when it comes at 58 and 60 is slow and incomplete. I've accepted that, but the rules are in place. Every visit is scheduled in advance, no surprises. My home is not a drop-in center for guilt. Nobody speaks about Marcus, his profession, his income, his background, with anything less than respect, in person or behind closed doors. The first time I hear otherwise, the next visit gets pushed back 30 days. I've enforced it twice. Brooke is welcome. She texts me every Sunday now. Sometimes just a photo of her daughter, sometimes a real question. Last month, she asked me how I knew Marcus was the one. It was the first time she'd ever asked me anything about my life that didn't circle back to her own. The beach house belongs to me and Marcus. It is not available for refinancing, leveraging, or borrowing against. Anyone who brings it up is reminded once. There is no second reminder. And my grandmother, she spends 2 weeks a month with us now. Her vascular dementia is progressing slowly, and there are days she forgets the name of the town but remembers every line of the letter she wrote me. I take that as proof that some things live deeper than memory. She taught me something I wish I'd learned earlier. Love doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it sits in a corner, watches for 30 years, and makes its move when it matters most. It's a Tuesday morning, and I'm sitting on the porch of the beach house. Margot is asleep in the oak crib. Marcus carried it out here so she could nap in the salt air the way my grandmother said her own children used to. The ocean is doing what it always does, arriving, retreating, arriving again, patient in a way that people rarely are. Inside, the kitchen table my grandfather built in 1970 still holds steady on its original legs. Marcus tightened the joints last month and said the craftsmanship was better than anything he'd seen in a catalog. Beside it, on the wall, hangs a new frame, my grandmother holding Margot on the day they met, both of them looking at the camera like they've known each other for 100 years. Marcus is outside fixing the porch stairs. He's wearing the same flannel he wore the night he sat with me in that parking lot and held my hand without saying a word. Some men fill a room by talking. Marcus fills it by staying. I don't know what comes next with my parents. I don't know if my mother will ever understand why she lost the house or if she'll spend the rest of her life believing she was robbed. I don't know if my father will ever look at Marcus and see a man instead of a missed opportunity. But I know this. My grandmother said, "This is my house. You are my home." And she was right. Home isn't four walls and a deed. Home is the person who chose you, not because of what you achieved or who you married, but because you showed up every Saturday, every rainy drive, every quiet afternoon in a kitchen that smelled like lemon pound cake. If you're watching this and you're the one in your family who always shows up but never gets seen, someone is watching. I promise you. They're just waiting for the right moment. Thank you for staying until the end. I mean that. If this story hit close to home, leave me a comment. Would you have forgiven my parents, or would you have kept your distance? There's no right answer, just yours. Hit like if you believe quiet love is the strongest kind. Subscribe if you want more stories like this one, and check the description. I've linked a few more that I think you'll connect with. I'll see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves, and take care of the people who take care of you.